The station was dying in increments, the way all proud things die, not in a single catastrophic note, but in a long diminishing chord. I know this because I logged it. That is what I do. I am Tael Sornvus, High Resonant of the Fourth Archive, Senior Keeper of the Vel'Ossara Diplomatic Classification Registry. 412 years of unbroken record, maintained across 11 station cycles through 3 harmonic recalibrations and 2 succession disputes. I have classified 11,241 species. I have written the formal assessment of every civilization that has presented itself to the Vel'Ossara for treaty, consideration, and I have written the assessments of the many more that never presented themselves at all, because they were not worth petitioning, and we saw no reason to wait. I had not, in 412 years, needed to revise a classification downward. Upward revisions were rare enough. Downward, to strip a species of even the modest dignity of a third harmonic rating, I had never once found it necessary. I had also never needed to beg. The station Keth Osser Prime had been the crown of the Vel'Ossara orbital network for 200 years. Its observation deck was a single curved facet of resonance glass 60 meters wide, engineered to catch the harmonic frequency of stellar drift and translate it into a low, continuous tone that the Vel'Ossara found deeply calming. It had cracked on the 9th day of the siege. The tone it produced now was a fractured thing. 2 notes where there had been one, slightly out of phase, an unresolved dissonance that none of us could shut out and none of us spoke about. To name a dissonance in our tradition is to invite it to stay. We had sent the distress harmonic on the 14th day. I want to be precise about that, because precision is what I have. We had held for 13 days, broadcasting on coalition frequencies, waiting for the response that our mutual defense compacts guaranteed. The Thessary Communion had acknowledged receipt of our first signal. The Andral Hegemony had acknowledged receipt of our third. The Communion sent a diplomatic advisory on day 8. They were monitoring the situation closely, they said, and they wished to express their deep resonance with the Vel'Ossara's enduring strength. The Hegemony sent nothing further. The other 6 signatories of the Keth Accord sent nothing at all. On day 14, the station's secondary harmonic drives, failing, and 431 civilians and wounded officers sheltering in the lower archive halls, I authorized the broadcast on open spectrum, all frequencies, every registered distress band, every treaty channel, every auxiliary and emergency wavelength we had on record, including, as my secondary console's automatic protocol required, pre-diaspora human emergency frequency listed in a 900-year-old auxiliary appendix of the Keth Accord. Section 7, subsection 14, frequency band 7.7 tertiary. I had drafted the note recommending its removal from that appendix. In fact, 4 decades ago, the species in question had not achieved third harmonic recognition, and the frequency's inclusion was a clerical inheritance from a less rigorous era. The note had never been processed. In the way of bureaucracies, it had simply remained pending. The first human vessel responded in 40 minutes. I was at my archive terminal on the upper deck when the comm indicator lit. I did not recognize the signal encoding at first. It was dense, layered, and transmitted at a compression ratio our standard receivers required a moment to decompose. When the translation resolved, it was a single line. Vel'Ossara Station Keth Osser, this is ECV Ardent Shore. We have your distress signal. Please transmit docking approach coordinates. Shh. I sat with that longer than I should have. Then I transmitted the coordinates. By the time I reached the cracked observation deck, there were 4 ships in approach formation where there had been one. I know what I expected, or rather what I had been professionally equipped to expect, which is not quite the same thing. I had written the Vel'Ossara's classification of humanity myself, the last comprehensive revision, 31 years prior. The entry was thorough. Pre-harmonic vocal structure, that is, a species that communicates through imprecise acoustic modulation rather than resonant chamber production. No verified caste hierarchy, no formal treaty record with your first-tier civilization. Technological capacity, functional but unrefined, assessed at the lower boundary of third harmonic equivalence only by the most generous metric. Diplomatic posture, erratic, to unilateral action, operating outside recognized protocol frameworks. That last point, I would note, was the most accurate thing I ever wrote about them. I simply assessed it as a deficiency. 4 ships that held position off the fractured docking ring of Vel'Ossara Prime were not small. The 2 forward vessels were heavy transports. I could see the cargo bay indicator cycling through deployment sequence from where I stood, their ramps already moving before they had completed docking lock. Behind them, a hospital ship, its medical bay lit from within in a pale clinical white that threw long rectangles of light across our cracked hull. And behind that, angled slightly to hold a wider field of coverage, a warship. Not an escort in name, a warship in posture and armament, present as a statement of intent. They had not been called. There was no treaty. There was no protocol requiring the second ship, let alone the 4th. The first humans through our docking collar moved without ceremony. A logistics officer, a compact, dark-haired woman who gave her name as Renvasic, supply coordination, ECV Ardent Shore, handed me a physical manifest before I had said a word. Medical team is already at your triage point, she said. Engineering is assessing hull stress on your lower ring. We'll need your casualty count and your priority list for transport sequencing. She was already moving as she said it. Tension on a small handheld console, not on me. She did not wait for my reply. I watched her go. I stood in the corridor of my own station. Station I had administered through 4 directors and 2 crises, and I held a manifest, printed on material I did not recognize. And I felt something I do not have a precise word for in the harmonic register. Closest approximation in our language is the dissonance note, the sound a resonance glass produces when it cracks. Not pain, exactly. Not shame, exactly. A note that cannot resolve. They worked for 9 hours. They brought down every one of the 431, the wounded on stretchers, the civilians in groups, the 3 officers too injured to move without support, a human medic named something I could not properly transliterate, carried one of them herself for the last 40 meters when the gurney would not fit through the collapsed corridor, junction. She did not ask for help. She did not appear to require it. She set him down, checked his monitors, and went back for the next. I had not sent a second distress call. I had not petitioned for a hospital ship. I had not negotiated an escort. I had not, in any formal or informal communication, indicated that I required anything beyond a vessel capable of receiving our civilians. They had simply looked at the situation and brought what the situation required. The Thessary Communion's formal response arrived on hour 11. They wished to convey their deep regret and were mobilizing a relief assessment team. Estimated arrival, 9 days. Renvasic found me at hour 12, at my archive terminal in the lower hall, the last occupied space on the station. The last transport was accepting its final passengers from the far corridor. "We're ready for you," she said. She looked at my terminal screen. She did not comment on what was on it. "A moment," I said. She nodded and stood back, which surprised me. I had half expected her to simply move me, the way her colleagues had moved everything else on this station that needed moving. I finished what I was typing. I closed the entry. I filed it. Then I followed her out. I have been asked, since what I wrote in those last minutes. I do not usually answer, but I will set it down here, because this is itself a record, and records should be complete. The Vel'Ossara Diplomatic Classification Registry, Species Entry 7019, Humanity, revised and finalized Vel'Ossara Prime, Day 15 of the siege. Previous classification, pre-harmonic, sub-caste, no treaty recommendation. Revised classification, first responders, arrived without treaty, arrived without petition, arrived with what was needed. Commend immediate first harmonic review. Note appended by the undersigned. The previous classification was in error. The error was mine.